Our midweek podcast this week is on the book of Amos, which I'm calling Amos, A Call to Social Justice. A little bit of things to know about. Amos was contemporaries with some other people like Jonah and Hosea. They all lived about the same time, and they actually were alive about the same time. I don't know if they actually knew each other. Perhaps, I don't know. Amos is unique in that we know more about him before his work as a prophet. He was a farmer, just like a regular guy. Uh, he seems to be from the southern kingdom of Judah, but he talks about the northern parts of Judah, and technically I think he was in the northern kingdom of Israel, because remember, the 12 tribes didn't remain together. They split into two kingdoms. And we had, after King Solomon, and the kingdom divided into two. Some stayed with the descendants of David, some did not. And so the kingdom split. And so anyway, it's interesting that the northern kingdom, which is what we called Israel, and the southern kingdom we called Judah, the northern kingdom fell first to the Syrians, and then eventually Babylon captured Judah, but they survived a little longer than that. So what we see is Amos was calling out the people for the things they were doing wrong. And when you look at a lot of the prophets that we study, it's where they're calling out the people for their wrongs, the things they're doing that's not correct. And so in this case, Amos is speaking to the kingdom of Israel, I really think, but also the northern cities of the kingdom of Judah, which I guess would be kind of in the middle of the area that we talked about. And so when I was looking at Amos a little bit, I went to my book, Deep and Wide, and when I was studying the book of Amos for the purpose of writing this book, what are the things that I brought out? It's kind of interesting that the way some of this edited out, and then when we look at history and where we were in 2010 through 2015, 2016, 17, when I was finishing this, and where we are today. But Amos was written by Amos around 750 BCE. So let's take a look. The first scripture that I pulled out of Amos was Amos chapter 3, verse 3. Do two walk together unless they have agreed to do so? And when I was studying that, I was talking, I was thinking about people who called themselves Christians, but they voted for people in political offices that clearly were not Christians, or ones who claimed to be Christian, but by their fruit, the fruit of their lives and what they did, clearly they did not operate by Christian principles. So they couldn't possibly. Here's a couple of paragraphs I wrote for the devotional I wrote following Amos 3:3. You cannot pretend that a salad is a big piece of strawberry cake just because you really want to eat cake. You cannot pretend that a politician is a Christian just because you want to vote for him or her. The Bible says we will know real Christians by their fruit. Examine the behaviors and patterns of behaviors of all politicians and use your vote as you think you should. However, do not justify your decisions by calling strawberry cake a salad. And that's, we have one primary politician right now, and then several of the their little minions and little devils that are doing the work of Satan. That um, you know, even one lady has had a picture of her reading her Bible and posted it out. And it's like, the idiot, the Bible is upside down, you know. And these people that are caught engaged in public sexual activity in movie theaters to people that are not their husbands, and then claim to be a Christian. And yeah, that just doesn't wash. Okay, people. And so you can't pretend. So if you decide that you want to vote for one of these people, then do that. But you can't vote for them and say, well, I voted for them because they're Christian, when they're not. I mean, if you want to eat a big piece of strawberry cake, then eat it, but don't say I'm eating salad when you're not. Okay. Another section I looked at, Amos chapter 5, verse 7. You who turn justice into bitterness and cast righteousness to the ground. And Amos is calling out the people for twisting truth to suit their own purposes. They missed the point or manipulated the points to get what they wanted. Amos was sent to preach to these people. They were very affluent and were seldom challenged from people around them. They were not at war, but it appears that the people of Israel and Judah were in a period of wealth. But it was not so for all people. They were sharply divided between those who were experiencing wealth and those who were very poor. Those with the wealth were the ones in power, and they worked the system so that the poor stayed poor, and they retained all the power and all the wealth. The people of Judah misinterpreted justice, where justice was supposed to be about treating others fairly and using kindness and caring in their communities. They turned justice into focusing on punishing those they did not like. They picked the rules and regulations that served their purposes of keeping the poor down and lifting themselves up. The truth and righteousness was thrown away because the truth would mess up their patterns of manipulating the system. It's very easy to draw parallels to this. At the time I wrote this several years ago, I had no idea the things that are happening today could even possibly happen. And isn't it funny that, let's see, when was this written? 750 BCE, so 2,800 years ago. 2,800 years ago, uh, uh, the kingdoms of Israel and kingdom of Judah, this is how they were behaving. What happened to them? Well, Assyria came in and took Israel, and then Babylon came in and took Judah. Another day I looked at Amos chapter 5, verse 10. You hate the one who reproves in court and despise him who tells the truth. People who are working from inside the system to enrich themselves and their friends do not like the truth. They must at all costs turn the eyes of the people upon those who are shining light on the truth. Somehow the ones bringing truth must become the enemy. Suppression of truth. Look for the people who are trying to stop people from talking. Look for people who are refusing to testify. Look for people who want fewer people to vote. Look for people who dismiss wrongdoing and look the other way. Wow. This is very powerful to me today, knowing that I wrote this several years ago. The people to whom Amos was sent were a people with a grand sense of entitlement. They were not in the least bit concerned with the poor and needy. Keeping the poor poor and the needy needy was entwined in their system that allowed them to stay rich and in power. When I was writing this, must have been near the time when the Obamas first entered the White House. And I do remember it. I'm writing about it here. I do remember where Michelle Obama said she was walking through the halls and the rooms of the White House for the first time and being overcome by the sense that she's living in a house that was built by slaves who were not paid for what they were doing. You know, we've always been a very entitled people. It's like we're a nation of Karens, which started when the colonists came here and just took the land. Oh, look at this land. We're going to take it. And they believed that was right. They believed it was, their privilege of being who they were, that they could just do that. And we're still surrounded by people who are of privilege, and then people who claim privileges that are not even really real. Another section, keep going on into the area where Amos is talking to them about, all you're focused on is becoming more and more wealthy and taking all you can, and then poorer people getting poorer and poorer. And he's even calling them out for not really using the day of rest as they should. In fact, they had so many laws on what you could and could not do on the Sabbath that the people were not actually spending the day for what it was supposed to. They were just sitting around complaining and grumbling because they were being forced to not work on this day. And with this day, just hurry up and get over so I can get back to work and making more money and cheating more people. And so the whole, their whole commandment, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Okay, they followed the letter of the law, did not work, did things, but they just sat there and they were just mean and grouchy because they weren't allowed to work today. So when you're looking at Amos, and I titled it in this book, Call to Social Justice. Amos, was a farmer. He was a regular person. So maybe he saw the injustices more clearly than others, and God led him to call the people out for the things that they were doing. And um, uh, his writing about his ministry and preaching to the people uh, became canonized into both the Jewish written works and in the Christian traditions in the collection of writings that we call the Bible. And I've often been critical of a lot of the Old Testament that is misused. Here's a part of the Old Testament that could really be used today, but that's part of the Bible that these politicians certainly is not going to bring any light to, because it would call them out for the very things that they're doing. So while Amos was calling these people out 2,800 years ago, it very clearly calls out the American people today and the American political system. That it's not everybody. The majority of people do not vote, so we're left with it's just about in thirds, but with the largest number being the people that did not vote this last time. And then I think it was 36% of the people did not vote, and um, 33% of the people voted for the orange turd, and about 31% of the people voted for Kamala Harris. So I guess Amos is calling out that 33% of the people that voted in the leaders we have in all of our branches of government right now. And so it's not everybody, but Amos actually does talk about the people that just that haven't said anything when they see this. So I guess Amos is also talking about those 36% of the people that did not vote. So the book of Amos calls out the people who just stand by and let stuff happen because they refuse. They don't want to. There's no one I want to vote for. Well, then you have to vote against someone. Okay, who's the worst? So you may not like all of your options as your candidates, but sometimes it's not about voting for the person you really want. Sometimes it's voting against the person you absolutely cannot allow to be in charge. I don't know why that's not clearer. But that's where we are, my friends. Amos is another one of these books here. It seems like several of these minor prophets that we have been studying in the last few weeks have had significant contemporary messages to us today. And it's not like you have to work the words to get it to say something that's relevant. It's very clear. You don't have to interpret it. It's just flat out stated. And the things that Amos flat out states to the people apply to the people today, apply to us today. Thank you for watching, my friends. If you like this sort of conversation, these things make your brain work a little bit, then I have succeeded. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Have a good rest of this week. And check back with me for next Monday's podcast, which is on, I'm looking at my list. Next Monday's podcast, I've not recorded it yet, but sometime this week I have to. Next Monday's podcast is God is God. Be careful of whose voice you're being told is God's. I'm not quite sure exactly how that conversation is going to come up, but there's a lot of things in my brain on that. All right.